The viewers, I'm now joined by Water Resource Engineer, Mr. Dassalen Trosau. Mr. Dassalen, thank you for joining us here in our studio. Today we are going to discuss with you on hydroeconomy. So to start with, how hydroeconomy is studied compared with other stream of economic field studies?
Okay, Fraser, thank you for inviting me to share you my views and practical work experiences in water resource development projects related to hydroeconomy. Coming to your question, when we see the ancient civilizations, like the Mesopotamia civilization, the Nile Delta civilization, and the Indus Valley civilization in India and Pakistan, they are entirely based on water resource development works. So during that time, they utilize water for irrigation, and the economy. They try to grow their economy. Specifically, the Nile Delta, the Nile Valley civilization has been based on this, the Nile civilization. When we come to the current civilization, it's based on the the water civilization, the water resource development works. Currently, there are countries which have got high income, which are said to be high income countries, like America, China, and the other countries also. When we see specifically in America, in the 1930s and in the 1940s, they worked on water resource development projects that has got direct impact on the current economy of the country. For example, in the 1930s, they have in the 1936 they have completed the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam is generating 2,000 megawatt electricity to date. It's well functional to date. And the others, like the Grand Coulee Dam, was constructed and completed during the 1942 in Gregorian calendar. So these projects, together with other water resource development works, have contributed too much to the current economy of United States. And the other example to mention is China. China has worked a lot in water resource development projects in order to boost the economy of the country. A number of water resource development projects do exist. To mention one notable example is the Three Gorges Dam. The Three Gorges Dam is built on the Yangtze River. It is the largest hydropower development project in the world.
So how significant is water in the history of civilization in general?
Yeah, it's very significant. It is the base of civilization. By the way, water resource development is the base of civilization. It's only when we produce food by irrigated agriculture that the economy of the country will be boosted. And it's only when we produce energy, hydroelectric energy, that the country's economy will be higher, because when you produce agricultural crops, food supply will be sufficient within the food sufficiency will be achieved, and job creation will be the other significance of irrigated agriculture or water resource development is creating jobs, and the other is producing input for industries, raw material for industries, and the other thing is for export, producing export agricultural output. So in this way, water resource utilization plays important role in the country's socio-economic development. That means it brings civilization, both the modern, as I said before, both the modern and the ancient civilizations are based on water civilization.
Mr. Dasalin, what is your analysis on the distribution of water potential in the world?
Yeah, water distribution in the world is in the surface and subsurface. Water is distributed in the surface and subsurface. The surface of the earth is 70% of the earth's surface is covered with, more than 70% of the earth's surface is covered with water, and the other 30% will only be land. So this 70% is both fresh and saline. The fresh water is accounts 97% of the total water available on the surface, on the globe. 97%, more than 97%. It's on the saline water. Saline water. Yeah. That's distributed over the oceans. That's unusable unless complex treatment works are undertaken. The ocean water is very highly saline. It's unusable. Yeah. And the other smaller portion of water over the globe is fresh water. That is 3%, only the 3% fresh water. This fresh water is available both in the surface and subsurface. In the surface, it's available in rivers, in lakes and ponds. In this way, the global water distribution is expressed in this way.
To what extent is water potential utilized for hydropower, for sanitation, for drink, for irrigation, and so forth? Do you have numerical data from the world perspective?
Yeah, from the world perspective, the world's water resource potential is not fully utilized. Actually, a lot remains to be done. A lot remains. There are countries around the globe where access to water and sanitation is very poor. It's very poor. It's not fully utilized to the extent what people need. It's not fully exploited in terms of water and sanitation demands. Even if we consider food production by irrigated agriculture, the world has not fully utilized the water resource for irrigation for crop production. There are a number of people around the globe who are still starving and lack of food that should have been produced in irrigated agriculture. And if we see in a hydropower part, a number of even developed countries, it's not 100%. The energy supply is not 100% by hydropower development. When it comes to the third world, the undeveloped countries, the utilization is very small. A lot remains to be done. The resources are available, the water resources are available. We have not fully utilized for the socio-economic development of the country, and improving the life standard of the people also. So the potential is not fully exploited in a global context also.
Mr. Dasale, there are a number of transboundary rivers in the world. So what is the experience of water utilization across riparian countries on fair and equitable principles? You have been mentioning mega projects in the Europe and America previously.
Yeah, the principle of transboundary rivers is based on fair, equitable, and reasonable way, and without harming without producing significant harm to the downstream. This is a principle. This is a principle of transboundary rivers. However, there are conflicts among the riparian countries of transboundary rivers. There are notable examples. There have been conflicts in Turkey. Turkey is, by the way, the source of Euphrates and Tigris. Euphrates and Tigris rivers originate from the Turkey and go to the Iraq and Syria. There have been conflicts in the usage of these rivers, Euphrates and Tigris in Turkey. There have been conflicts, a number years of conflicts, and there has been another conflict in Afghanistan and Iran.
Okay.
Iran and Afghanistan have been in conflict with a transboundary river, and the other is there are a number of transboundary river conflicts. However, based on the principles, they have to utilize that water in that way. Even though there have been conflicts, they have been settled in this way, based on the fair, equitable, reasonable way, and without causing significant harm in the downstream country. In this way, there are experiences of the downstream country conflicts.
You have been mentioning role of water potential for civilization in the previous time and in the existing situation. So how the world economy nowadays is becoming more water dependent than ever?
Yeah, today food production is the critical thing. Food supply. The world's population is growing at an alarming rate. So we have to feed this population. We have to provide, and only rain-fed agriculture will not be sufficient to provide food for the world's population. It's getting more than 6 billion. The world population is getting more than 6 billion.
7 billion.
Nearly 7 billion. So we have to provide food. To provide food for the increasing population of the world, we have to provide food by using our water resource by irrigation. And the other thing is the energy demand. There are actually the energy sources other than hydro, but the best the best energy source, which is environmentally friendly, which does not harm the environment, which can be developed at a lower cost, is the hydro energy. So we have to provide the energy demand of the world population, and the industries also. The industries are expanding, requiring tremendous amount of energy. So thereby harnessing hydro projects, hydropower development projects, the world needs to provide energy to the industries.
Is there any trace of water scarcity because of the climate change, and what will be the consequence?
Yeah, due to climate change, that means when there is not adequate rainfall.
Yeah.
When there is not adequate rainfall, drought happens. When the rainfall is not adequate, when drought happens, we cannot produce food for crops because the rainfall is not adequate. Rainfall has got two problems. Two problems. One is it's not it's not evenly distributed in terms of space and time. Its spatial and temporal distribution is not fair. It's not fairly distributed. And the other thing is, it will not, in some time, it will not adequate. Adequate rainfall may not be get.
Mr. Dasari, are you saying in a decades of rainfall is the only cause for a scarcity of water in our future?
Yeah, we are, by the way, the original source or the ultimate source of all forms of water is rainfall. Rainfall, all, be it the river, be it the lake, be it the groundwater, originally they receive. All these water sources receive originally from the rainfall. That is the ultimate source, is rainfall. If rainfall is not adequate, our storages will be minimal. Our like lakes, rivers, and dams will be minimal. In that way, that is due to rainfall scarcity. That
what
drought
about
happens.
human-induced factors, like for instance, invasive weeds, happen here in Lake Tana will be taken as an example.
Yeah, there are actually human-induced factors contribute much, but the significant one relies on the space and time and even distribution of rainfall and its inadequacy.
Okay, what are the recommended ideas on wise utilization of water, if so?
Okay, that's a good question. We have the world is endowed with this natural water is a natural resource, by the way. So it has to be properly utilized. It has to be kept from pollution.
Okay.
It has to be kept from pollution, and it has to be conserved. Water has to be conserved. So soil water conservation practices has to be so as to minimize the scarcity or the loss of water. Water conservation practices has to be exercised, like tree planting, and some other soil conservation works also. When we plant the trees, the groundwater will be recharged. We will be having safe water, adequate water in the subsurface. If the surface is if we can get this water in the surface, we can exploit it for another time. We can find it at shallow depths. We can exploit it for potable, for irrigation and some other purposes. By the way, significant amount of boreholes for potable water, deep boreholes which are constructed, which are drilled for potable water supply purpose, get empty after a year, after 2 years, after 6 months, they get a year. This is because of lack of recharge from the surface. The groundwater is limited. It has to be recharged. After we exploit it, it has to be naturally recharged. So planting trees will be the remedial measure to recharge our groundwater.
So how green economy, the one you have been mentioning earlier, planting trees and so forth, is interdependent with hydro economy for sustainable development of a certain country?
Yeah, we have to keep our environment. We have to make green. For example, in the world, there are countries which are known for their water potential, fresh water potential, like Brazil. Brazil is the top in water resource potential availability. The United States, Canada, and Russia. All these areas are known to be for their high water resource potential availability. This is because of the presence of forests. One can take an example, Brazil, due to the presence of Amazon forest. The rainfall is very high there in Brazil. So the water resource will be very high. So if we make our environment greener and greener, our water resource potential will be very high, directly related. The more the greener the environment is, the more the water potential we will have. In that way, the green economy is related to or the greening is related to the water resource availability.
Mr. Desal, let's move on specifically to the context of Ethiopia now. What is the share of Ethiopia's water potential in the world?
Okay, Ethiopia is actually endowed with immense amount of water resources, both in the surface and subsurface. The surface water potential, like in rivers, we do have 124 billion cubic meter of water. Preliminary studies show that we do have 124 billion cubic meter of water in rivers, and 70 billion cubic meter of water in the lakes, and also 30 billion cubic meter of water in the underground. We do have this potential. The origin of this potential, when we see the origin of this potential, is from the rainfall. Ethiopia receives high amount of rainfall from June to September. That is the current season, from western monsoon wind that originates from the Atlantic. And this way, Ethiopia gets high amount of rainfall, particularly the western highlands. The western highlands, that starts from the southern Baro Akobo basin, Omogibe basin, Abai basin, and Tekeze basin. These areas usually receive around 2,000 millimeters of water annually. And when the rainfall comes to the surface, it will take two things will be happening. That is runoff and the infiltration. The runoff and the infiltration. When the rainfall intensity is higher, than the infiltration rate, runoff will be generated. And this runoff will be joining the surface water source like rivers and lakes. And on the other hand, if the infiltration rate is greater than the rainfall intensity, the subsurface or the groundwater will be receiving from the rainfall, and this way we do have high amount of rainfall. However, it has to be kept. It has to be kept. Sure. It has to be utilized for the country's economic development.
We will come to that point. Mr. Dasale, as to my knowledge and when I see research, there is no an inch of water entering to the Ethiopian boundary. Is there any other country like Ethiopia, unless it is an island in the world?
Yeah, Ethiopia is actually a country of transboundary rivers. All the rivers are transboundary. As we said, no single river is approaching towards Ethiopia. This is due to the geographic,
mountainous
nature of the country. The mountainous, it is higher in altitude. In altitude, Ethiopia is higher than Ethiopia is higher than the neighboring countries. The neighboring country. Then the slope, the terrain is undulating, and it is slopey. So much amount of the rainfall goes to the neighboring countries as a transboundary river. I can mention a number of transboundary rivers are available. For example, the Nile. The Nile itself, as we know it, is a transboundary river which significantly shares the high amount of Ethiopian surface water source that joins eventually in the Mediterranean Sea. The others also, like Omogibe, joins in the border of Kenya and Ethiopia, and it joins the Lake Turkana. And the other is the Awash River. The Awash River, actually it is partly utilized in the country, relatively. In relative terms, Awash is utilized, to some extent, and it joins the near Djibouti, the Lake Abe joins there, and the other is Wabi Shebele and Ganali rivers originate from Ethiopia and join lastly the Indian Ocean, thereby passing the Somaliland. Tekeze also, in the northern part, it crosses the Sudan, parts of the Sudan, the northern Sudan, and ultimately joins the White Nile River.
It becomes Atbara when
it becomes Atbara when it's immediately when it leaves Ethiopia, it becomes Atbara. That way, we do have a number of transboundary rivers.
Sure. Almost over 85% of Ethiopian population is an agrarian society. So, how water is significant for its development?
Yeah, water is important. Previously, we have been utilizing only rain-fed agriculture. As we said before, rain-fed agriculture alone cannot be adequate in supplying food for the population. We have to irrigate it. We have to change to irrigated agriculture. We have to change irrigated agriculture. So, as we said, more than 80% of the population is agrarian society. A high amount of labor is available there, and huge amount of land resources available for irrigation. So utilizing this water and land, we can produce food for the country's population, and this way, water is very important for the agrarian, not only for the agrarian society, but also the rural community. Also, the rural community obviously gets food from the agrarian society. So, it's very important. It's very important for us, for our country.
To what extent do you think this water potential has been utilized so far?
Oh, we do have actually. We do have a high water potential that will be utilized for irrigation. By the way, we do have 3.8 million hectares of irrigable. More than that. This is a preliminary study. We do have more than 3.8 million hectares of land that can be irrigated. That can be used for irrigated agriculture. However, a portion of it is utilized. Not more than 5% is utilized. That means a lot remains to be done in the agriculture. In utilizing our water for agriculture, a lot remains to be done. And the other part is the hydropower generation. The country has got a potential of 45,000 megawatt hydroelectric power potential. Still, a portion of it is utilized. When we add the GERD is estimated to be produced 6,000 megawatt, and today it's nearly in between 2,000 3,000. If we include GERD, to date we have used only nearly 9,000 megawatt. So we have not, both in agriculture and power generation, we have not fully utilized our resource. The extent is very small. We need to work more on our resources.
Yeah, so, but Mr. Dasalem, because of the mountainous nature of Ethiopia, many rivers which originates in this country flows in the gorges, which is not suitable for irrigation. So what should be done to use this hydropower potential for generating electricity, which the country is demanding?
Yeah. The country's topography is mountainous. It's mountainous.
In fact, it is also suitable for generating power.
Yeah.
The topography.
The topography itself. By the way, Ethiopia is the second from Africa in hydropower potential. One is Congo, first in Congo, and the second is Ethiopia in Africa in hydropower potential. This is obviously due to the topographic nature. It's mountainous. We can easily generate. Huge amount of hydro potential with at a lower cost than the other countries. This is one privilege of the country, of the mountainous nature of the country. So we have to utilize this potential. We have to utilize this potential. As I said before, we do have 45,000 megawatt. We have to utilize, and the other parts also. There are also irrigable areas, significant, tremendous amount of huge amount of irrigation potential is available. So, wherever there are convenient places, we should not necessarily put a dam for irrigation across the Nile Gorge. We have alternatives. We can build dams on the tributaries to Abai, where there are a number of irrigable irrigable area. And that is the tribute. We have to work on the tributaries. Necessarily, we may not work on the gorges for irrigation. In the gorges, we can build hydropower projects.
Mr. Dasari, you said Ethiopia has a potential to generate about 45,000 megawatt, but we have below 5,000 nowadays. In contrary, it's a country which has no river in its boundary, but from the upper stream countries, Egypt is now generating 45,000 megawatt. So what happened to Ethiopia to utilize?
Egypt has got nearly has satisfied the power demand nearly, not 100%.
98, more than 98.
More than 98. But when it comes to Ethiopia, the figure will be very small. The coverage, the power
below 50%.
Below 50%. And we have they have used it. They have satisfied their hydropower potential demand, and we have not utilized. And in our case, we need to work on that. We have the right, the legal right, by the way, even though there are conflicting ideas in the Egypt side, so that we should not utilize the Nile water, the Abai water for hydropower and the generation. Ethiopia has got legal background to use its natural resource, to use its water for the country's socio-economic development. It can use in such a way that it can't bring significant harm to the downstream countries, based on fair, equitable, and reasonable usage of the water. But actually, Egypt is claiming.
In fact, whatever has been said, nowadays Ethiopia is building a mega hydropower project on the named Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam. We have already announced the first phase of filling the water. So would you briefly explain to me how this dam is economically and environmentally significant or crucial to Ethiopia and the region as well?
Yeah, this dam actually it's a hydro dam, a hydropower. On the Ethiopian side, it will provide power only. It provides power only. It's not for irrigation for Ethiopia. And for the other riparian countries like Sudan and Egypt, it's very much beneficial. I think they have to be cooperative. The construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam has got its own positive impact for the Sudan and Egypt, because we are releasing well-regulated and sediment-free water. Both the Sudan and Egypt have got their water. They have got dams along the Nile River. We can mention the High Aswan Dam. The life of High Aswan Dam is extremely endangered because of the sediment that goes from the Ethiopian highlands. It will be the lifespan of the high Aswan Dam, which Egypt is entirely dependent, is in problem with this sediment. So they have to take this as an advantage. They have to take it as an advantage because it's well regulated, and it traps significant amount of sediment here in Ethiopia. This is one advantage: safety of their dams, long life of their dams. So in this way, they have to be cooperative. And the other problem that GERD has minimized is flooding problem. Flooding is very common in Sudan and Egypt.
By the way, as we are speaking now, there are a number of people being displaced in Sudan because of the flood from
it's recent.
From Nile. So what is the takeaway lesson for the downstream countries of Egypt and the Sudan, and even to the international community? What should they make of from the Ethiopian positions as the dam is important for the downstream countries?
Yeah, it's very important. They have to be. That's why I'm saying they have to be cooperative, because it makes safe their dam, and it makes safe against the dam the problem of flood, and the other is storing the water here in Ethiopia relatively in highland than storing there in Egypt and Sudan will significantly minimize the loss of water due to evaporation. If we store it there in Aswan Dam, the evaporation loss will be too much, because it's desert there in Egypt. The evaporation rate is very high. So storing here in Ethiopia and sending regulated water will be beneficial to both Sudan and Egypt. And the other problem that the GERD mitigates is usually the Egypt and the Sudan farmers, irrigate their fields by flooding because there is extreme water, and it will increase the groundwater level to the surface, and that will bring waterlogging to the crops. In that way, the crop yield will be very small because of waterlogging effect. So in this way, it will be beneficial for Egypt and Sudan. So they have to be cooperative in that.
Despite the fact that Egypt says the Nile River is crucial for its survival, there are several research which show Egypt has been undertaking excessive and unwise water utilization on the Nile River. What are the major indicators would you like to mention for me?
Okay. The practical experience and the practical things that what they do, that's the irrigation practice in both Sudan and Egypt is, we will lose the water. The irrigation technologies by flooding. They flood the irrigation field. Okay. This is not appropriate. They have to utilize the water by better irrigation technologies, like drip and sprinkler. These methods, this irrigation methods, this drip and irrigation, drip and sprinkler irrigation methods significantly minimize the water loss. These methods have high water application efficiency. So the Egyptians are advised to use this water saving irrigation technologies like drip and sprinkler irrigation. And the other things that they have to rely is, rather than relying on the Nile River, the groundwater potential in Egypt is tremendous. It's long time accumulated water within the subsurface. The studies estimate that the Nubian desert has got 500 years flow of Nile. 500 years Nile's flow of water is available in the subsurface of the Nubian desert. So they have to utilize that groundwater potential for both irrigation and domestic water supply. They have to utilize that. So in this way, they have to use their alternatives. They do have alternatives. They have to use that resource, that groundwater resource. In our case, our groundwater is, even though it is said to be 30 billion cubic meter, in comparison with that of Egypt, it's very small. It's very small, because when the rainfall comes, significant amount of water will be conveyed via transponder. The groundwater recharge is very small because of the mountainous topography and the slopiness of the much of the country. So they have alternative. They have to use that kind of alternative. Okay. That alternative is their groundwater potential.
In Ethiopian context, the investment done on the agriculture sector, which employs over 80 and 85% of the population of the country, is very low compared with other sector of investments in the industry and in manufacturing. So how do you think water is important to engage in the investment activities of agriculture?
Yeah, okay.
And what should be done in that area?
Okay, that's a good question. Currently, a number of industries here in Ethiopia, a number of industries, both agro industries and textile industries, are being currently nearly in operation. Some are under construction and some are becoming to be in operation. That require agricultural input. Like agro industries entirely require agricultural input. So these agro industries need to be provided agricultural inputs. So to meet the demand of these agro industries, we need to produce crops by irrigation. We need to implement irrigation projects wherever it's appropriate for the supply of these industries. And the other thing is, textile industries are also emerging here in Ethiopia. Textile industries require cotton. Cotton can be produced by irrigation. So cotton irrigated farms should be started. So the irrigation, water resource development work has to assist the industry. In this way, we can improve the target plan of the industry, thereby producing irrigated agricultural outputs to the industry.
Coming to the context of Amhara region is home to the largest Lake Tana, and the longest river in the world, Abai. So what should be done here in Amhara region, and what are the possible scenarios for fruit and vegetable development here in Amhara region if we utilize the water wisely?
Okay. Here in the Amhara region, also the Amhara region contributes the largest share of water resource within the country, even, because it is a starting area of the Blue Nile River, and there are another lakes. So the water resources are available. The land is also available here in the Lake Tana area. Also, there have been a number of practices of constructing dams and irrigation practices, like we can mention in Koga over there near Marawi, and there are currently projects being undertaken like Rub and Magaj. So these things, this water resource development works will be providing water to the, will be providing food for the local community, like you said. Maybe it's fruit and vegetable in an export items also. Why not export items also? So a lot remains to be done in this area.
Mr. Dasale, we are running out of time, so if you have anything you want to add in 1 minute, you are welcome.
Okay. Let me say something about in water resource development works. Stakeholders three stakeholders to exist. One is the government, and the other is the professionals. and the third one is the community, the users. So if I have time, let me explain what needs to be done, or what needs to be done on this, what's required from these stakeholders. Let me start from the government side. The government should take the water resource development works as a priority area, because working on the water resource development projects will create forward on the economy, forward and backward linkage, because it creates job, it produces food for the population, and provides energy to the industries, provides energy industrial raw materials. It creates the overall economy to be stable, and it grows the GDP. So the government has to work on this and should allocate appropriate budget for water resource development projects. One is the budget, and the other is steady works. The water, what is our water potential? It has to be, preliminary studies do exist. However, it has to be verified. It has to be well studied, and the water resource database should be available. What amount is it? Where is it available? Where is it available? How can we use that resource, both in the surface and subsurface? There has to be a steady document. There has to be water resource database. In this way, the government has to work on the water sectors, and the other is the professional side. The professionals has to be working for the people of the country. They have to be ethical. They have to be competent. In this way, while studying water resource development projects, they have to take the local knowledge also. They have to consult the community.
You are part of it.
Yeah, they have to consult the community, because indigenous knowledge is available there in the community. We can take a lesson while we are planning and designing projects. And the other is, with projects should be designed and studied with lesser environmental impact.
Okay.
We should minimize the environmental impact, and it has to be, the project should be designed should be designed in multi-purpose. If we assume some dam to construct dams somewhere, it has to be utilized for irrigation. It has to be utilized for hydropower.
Integrated development.
Development.
Okay. Mr. Dassalen Truso, thank you for sharing your view, and thank you for your time. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, that's all we have for now. Many thanks for watching, and do stay with the rest of our programs from Amhara TV. Thank you very much indeed.